Townsend, and I'm the founder and president of Divorce Right. And we provide training to HR professionals and company supervisors, and we provide divorce coaching and case management, providing guidance and direction to your divorcing employees that they so desperately need. Divorce is a huge disruptor, not only to the employee going through it, but to the company they work for. And our coaches here at Divorce Right have a very unique perspective on divorce that sets us apart from every other option that you have for divorce. They have a deep understanding of the legal, financial, and emotional aspects of divorce, and they can handle even the highest conflict of cases with compassion and professionalism. Our coaches are trained to look at the entire picture, helping your employees make good decisions based upon their goals and their needs. So if you're an HR benefits manager or an HR benefits provider or consultant, please reach out to us and see if adding our suite of solutions is a good fit for your business. And I want to introduce today, we're going to be talking about another peaceful option for divorcing employees with our special guest, Susie Miller. Susie Miller is a TEDx speaker and international divorce strategist at bestwaytodivorce.com. Her online resource hub is shared with employees, volunteers, and stakeholders at charities, schools, not-for-profits, and she's a subject matter expert. She provides free access to information and inspiration to help divorcing families evolve from broken families into extended families, showing them how to avoid costly court battles and to use peace as their weapon of choice. Susie has been featured on radio for Women's Hour, the Daily Mail, and C5's The Vanessa Show, and has collaborated with Ministry of Justice in promoting dispute resolution, in the UK. She is also the UK ambassador for the International Amicable Divorce Network. Welcome, 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 Susie. I'm so happy from the other side of the pond.
Yeah, thousands of miles away. Thank you so much for having me here.
Isn't technology wonderful that we're able to do this? And what I love about when I talk to somebody from another country is we talk about how different divorce can look. Actually, I need to even forget that, because here in the United States, we're one country, but 50 different ways to divorce. And over when I hear, think of the UK, you've got, the Irelands, the Scotlands, and Wales, and the UK. You guys kind of have that too over there. You guys, it's different over there than it is here.
A little bit. So in Scotland, for example, the financial and the legal aspects, there'll be differences, but essentially the process of from a user's point of view, like if you're getting divorced, it's those aspects will make a difference, but most of it is sorting out the kids, sorting out the money, and it's all very practical stuff. So it is different, but fundamentally the same.
Interesting. Well, what I love about what we're both in this, in this industry to do is to create a peaceful way to divorce, because we know that employees that go through a very violent, very toxic, very conflictive, right, type of divorce, they are a mess of an employee during that time. And that can go, 12 months, 18 months, up 3 years. Mine was. So you are there to help people have a peaceful way to end there. So what is a more peaceful way to divorce so that it can make a difference in the employer's bottom line?
Well, essentially, as you pointed out, it can go on for a long time. It can be really, really nasty. So you get problems as an employer with presenteeism. They're turning up to work, those employees, but they are not there. Their head is somewhere else, and that is a problem. And there are also employee relations. So I know of someone who said, "Oh, my manager, she's having this really horrible divorce." And for months and months, it was hell going to work because the manager was in such a state. And if she had been managing to have a less combative divorce, it wouldn't have affected her team so much. The other side is you've also got, people like, the guy, he won't come out for a drink and everyone thinks he's unsociable, but they don't realize he hasn't seen his children for 6 months because he might not want to tell people. So there's all these different levels that are happening, which all come, and the mental health aspects as well. So all of this is happening. And if you as an employer can make sure that your employees are aware of the better options, because I'm telling you, they're not. If you
No,
can give them that awareness and that information, even just that, you can make a significant difference to not just how much better they are when they turn up to work and how much better they work with everyone, but also in their own lives and their own families. So it's an all-round win-win for everybody to make sure they understand the more peaceful options in a way that allows them to access them. So it's not just giving them the information. You've got to kind of help them have access to, kind of be boot camped, if you like, for dispute resolution, which is essentially what I do with my resources.
Right, exactly. And here in the US, we have a lot of EAP plans that are out there that include some sort of legal assistance. It may give them, a discount on legal assistance. It may be an insurance policy. And those are great for, if you have to sue your next door neighbor because their tree fell down on your fence, right? Or, sue your mechanic because your car got messed up. But for divorce, I struggle with it because the option is litigation, which is that toxic, conflictive, it's not amicable 90% of the time, 95% of the time. And, so we want to explain to employers, while that's a great benefit most of the time, but for the one time that they need it for the biggest event of their life, it can actually cause this and cause a more dysfunctional employee while that's going on. So what do you think is the key bit of information that most employees need to know to make and stay out of court and out of that litigation? So make it not just possible, but just absolutely a no-brainer.
I think you totally hit the nail on the head there. That or go and see a lawyer. That first bit of information, which is usually the first thing people do, it may not actually be the first thing they should do. Yes, getting some legal advice is useful, but not handing over your divorce to a system that is essentially, whether it's in the UK or the US, essentially it's very toxic.
It's very toxic.
And so from an employer's point of view, they need to understand that and help their employees understand that lawyers are not counselors. Lawyers are not specialized financial planners. They are not trained in dealing with a narcissistic spouse, which is a whole big area in itself, but does not mean you can't use dispute resolution. You just got to be a bit clever how you do it. It's about helping them understand that dispute resolution is not fluffy. It actually takes strategy, it takes support, and there is a systemized way to approach it where the legal aspect has a part to play. But if you do it right, it's quite a small part, and it doesn't need to be what's driving the whole thing.
Right. That's what, we love mediation. If I could wave a magic wand, I would have everyone do it. One of the things that, you mentioned, everybody thinks about lawyering, you got to lawyer up, And that's because it's the biggest brand of this whole process. Why? Because there's a lot of money to be made in conflict and chaos. There just is. And with mediation, the goal of that mediation is to keep the temperature down and keep your employee being just able to take a breath and not just constantly be at their spouse's, just trying to battle it out. So that's why I think, what we were going to get to is just offering an employee, instead of a call with as you guys call them, a counselor, right? That we really need to add another option of mediation or, there's 5 ways to divorce over here in the United States. Litigation should be the last one.
Yeah.
It should be absolutely the last resort. You feel the same?
Absolutely. And you hear often in the EAP programs, they might be able to get some legal advice, or they'll, when I say to them, have you got any provision for people who are dealing with divorce? They go, oh, yeah, they can call a counselor. And interestingly, I ran recently a CPD training for a bunch of very experienced counselors to tell them about divorce. So these are the people who get referred, people refer to them. And during the workshop, one of the counselors said, oh God, I wish I spoke to you 2 weeks ago because I've given completely the wrong advice to a client. Because what's interesting about the whole divorce industry is actually quite often the different players don't always understand what the options are either. So it's just as important to train the professionals as it is the actual employees about what dispute resolution is. So, for example, if getting through a divorce, if someone's stressed, obviously they're going to be stressed. What they don't need is just someone who's going to stick a plaster over it or hold their hand while they go through this horrible, messy, traumatic situation. What they need is a practical kind of virtual team around them.
Yes.
And so that they need to understand that they want to talk to certain professionals, like a specialized financial expert, to work out how to sort things out. What's the best way to split? They're the best people to use, not the lawyer. The lawyer's not spent years and years training in finances. They might have some fancy software, but that's all. And then and no disrespect for those who've been on training courses and learnt things, but that's not their speciality. But in the same way, if I'm going to guide someone towards talking to a specialist financial expert and they're all over the place, sometimes a counsellor at that point is useful, but quite often they need a coach. They need someone who says, whatever happened to you in the past, however traumatized, because all their trauma comes up from childhood and the whole thing, now is probably not the best time to really go deep into that. Where do you want to get to? What is your aim? And so really use more of a coaching technique. Use the financial experts to work out how it should be split. Not some lawyer or some judge. They should do it themselves and go into the mediation to cut a deal. That, for me, is what mediation is: a safe place where you go to cut a deal. And from there, you can then make that deal legally binding. And you may or may not involve a solicitor or lawyer, attorney at that point, depending on how complex it is. And it really should be that straightforward.
It really should.
It's logical. And I know
this is why do we have this? It's like
and you probably have the same thing as me. You explain this to people and they're like, oh, and I go, yeah, it sounds really logical. And they're like, well, why has no one else told me this? I hear this all the time. And I go, well, sometimes they don't know. And sometimes, there is no financial incentive for them, because the problem is, even for mediators, by taking this very collaborative approach, you don't even need the mediator as much, because they go into the mediation ready. Because I say, what are you going to mediate? And they're like, oh. I said, why don't you work out what you want to mediate? What's the deal you're going to cut? Do that first. Go into the mediation. And if they're dealing with a raging narcissist who's really difficult, they will be told, in this country, lawyers will say, oh, you can't use mediation. And of course, that's just not true. But you do have to be a bit cleverer, and you need to, that person who's the victim of that relationship may need to spend some time with a specialist who helps them learn how to communicate, put in the boundaries, feel safe. Everyone can use Zoom online now. You've got lots of online mediation, which is fantastic. So I always go, you don't have to stay in the same room. You don't even have to see them. They can be put in a breakout room and the mediator can shuttle. So what people need to understand is they have so much control over the way dispute resolution works. They go to court, they have no control at all. They might
lose. Right. Absolutely. And that's what, I want people to understand. You don't want a judge making decisions about your financial future or your kids' future. You want to work that out. So that's why when we talk mediation, even if there are some sticky points, let's all get to the agreement where, the easy stuff out of the way. Who gets grandma's china, right? who gets the car, who gets the boat, who gets the motorcycle, all of that kind of stuff that's kind of, well, I don't want that car, you take the car.
Yeah.
All of those things that can be easy peasy, to your point, negotiated before we get to a courtroom.
Mm-hmm.
If after that point, there's just absolutely one, maybe two issues that are on the table that we do have to litigate over, we've just managed to create an environment where they're more likely to still be able to speak to each other after this is over, because that's, especially when there's children involved, that's critical. That's just absolutely critical. But imagine being able to spend this much money on a case where if you had done it the other way, you would be spending, this crazy amounts of money. So and speaking of money, so how does your company, The Best Way to Divorce, Separating and Co-Parenting Resource Hub, save employees thousands in legal fees, and it improves their mental health? Why don't you tell us about that?
I shall. I just wanted to add on to what you were just saying, though. So I think, again, it's really important for people to understand this is some of the information that they could be learning through their employers, through a divorce resource hub, through the kind of work that you're doing, is that whatever they've managed to mediate, and as you point out, that's they've then got a system they can use ongoing to talk about the kids, rather than having a judge sort of work it all out for them and then still be at each other's throats. But there may well be bits they just can't agree on. They don't need to go to court. Get a private judge. Get an arbitrator. Wait, and people assume all that's so expensive. No, it isn't, because you don't need all the barristers. You can do it online. You can do it in a time that suits you, and they can just be sorting out that specific area. They're not having to
one or two things.
Yeah. Whereas if you go to court, quite often the court are not interested in what you've already agreed. Everything can be thrown out. So, and I think this is, again, a massive misconception that people have, is that it's only mediation or court. But actually, no, there's other tools in the peace toolbox, like arbitration, that you can bring in, and they just need to be part of a strategy that just keeps you out of court. But yeah, as far as the resources, it's that kind of information. So they can access that through the Best Way to Divorce Resource Hub, which is free to register on. So any employer who sends a link to that, the employees access that key information. They also get a bunch of videos, which is, bless their hearts, is as if they've been stuck in a lift with me lots of times, and lots of short videos where they get that included. Whereas if they just went there on their own, they'd have to pay for that. So they get extra things for free that give them all this information and really open up the possibility that there's a better way. A lot of this is about not just information. It's just as important to have the inspiration to believe it's actually possible, especially if you've got a very difficult ex. It gives them access to workshops, online workshops. I have evergreen ones, but I also do regular live ones. I've run them in California and as well as the UK. And that's just, again, quite often it's not just this is the information you need to know and the opportunity to ask questions, but also the most popular one is divorcing a difficult spouse. That seems to go down very well. So I can say, I know you'll be told that in your particular case, maybe there's an abusive relationship, forget mediation. No, you need to know the options, and then you decide. Don't let someone else tell you and limit what you can do. So we can, and so people need more than just a resource hub. They need that access to one-to-one. And I have a very low-cost support group as well. And as part of that, I sit on Zoom once a month. They can come and talk to me. I have a chat, so any questions they've got. So they're saving thousands in not asking questions of lawyers that in 90% of the time are nothing to do with the law. So that's quite useful.
Right. So many people don't realize that, first of all, they burn through time. There is a saying, and I won't talk about it today, but Monday mornings in a family law attorney's office is very busy. And this is what it is. It's, that son of a bitch, didn't come out. I was supposed to have dinner with my mother, and he was supposed to have the kids back by 5 o'clock. And at 7:10, he drives down the driveway and never says anything. And they're doing this, right? So that's a 15-minute phone call to their attorney at a $400 an hour. So it's $100.
Yeah.
But what they don't realize is that that attorney is going to, even though it's going to be cut and paste, because that's the same phone call he just got off of 10 minutes earlier. Am I right? Right.
Yeah.
So it's a cut and paste to opposing counsel. So that's a 45 minutes. So now you're up to 1 hour, $400 just for that phone call to send it to opposing counsel. Now opposing counsel has to do the same thing, has to pick up the phone and call his or her client and say, hey, you were supposed to bring the kids back last night at 5 o'clock, and at 10 till 7, you mosey into the driveway, and she's pissed, and she's blah, 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 blah. So what do you want to say? So now that another $100, and then another $300. So that just that one phone call ended up costing them at a minimum $800. And it can go much, when actually this is about a communication problem between the two, where they need to work it out and don't have to go through lawyers to say, hey, you know what?
Yeah.
It's really important to me that we keep our schedules the way we're supposed to, because I had plans to take, the kids to see their grandparents. And because you were not, careful with your time, blah, blah, blah. So we help with things like that, right? Stop
co-parenting plans.
Lawyer, stop calling and spending $1,000 on issues that could be coached. You could be coached through.
Yeah.
To say, let me just show you how you can do this and solve this problem without spending thousands. That's what I love about what we do.
Yeah. And it's like, why don't you create a co-parenting plan? A lot of people leave the kids till the end, but creating that plan, thinking about it, that can have an impact on the financial settlement. And also most parents, we bumble along, we often don't agree, and these are the ones who stay together. So when you split up, you kind of really have to learn about boundaries and systems, and not just demanding that something of the other person, but what rules am I going to stick to as well. So all of these things which tend to get left to the side. But based on what you were just saying, just imagine you've got two things there. You've got the massive financial stress on that person, who's then going to work and they're scared, and maybe they're going into debt. I don't know how it is in the US, but in the UK, you're not allowed to go into debt if you work in a bank. So you're not going to tell your HR person. So and now the cost of living crisis, that's in itself is going to cause a massive stress and a mental health issue, basically. But then you've also got the fact that, sad to say, the person who's been stewing all over the weekend may have got a nasty letter from the other person's lawyer on a Friday afternoon when they can't respond, and it's deliberately done that way so that they stew and they are suffering all week, and it's a deliberate sort of legal bullying through this toxic system.
It is,
and I've heard of it so many times, so I know it definitely happens. So by the end of that morning, not only are they spending all that money making that call, but they're in a terrible state. And how fit are they to go to work, and how fit are they to be in a team and for people to work with? And so much of this is completely avoidable.
It is so much, because it's immediately, like, from the moment you say, I'm going to get a lawyer, that's when the walls go up and the communication stops. And then the sickest part about it is that you have to go through your attorney to talk to your spouse. I mean, this is just nonsensical. This is just, we have created, I have a saying, it's divorce does not destroy people. It's the way we divorce that destroys people. And it's, as long as somebody's walking away with, baby needs a new pair of shoes, seems to be justifiable to have that system. And I hate that. So as we kind of wrap this up, we both know that you and I are just really super passionate about supporting families and helping them choose a better way to do this. So why are you so passionate about, what is this boot camping, separating families for dispute resolution? Tell us a little bit about that.
So what I'm very passionate about is I want every employee to be able to access to be part of a company who not only gives them access to free resource hub, but also that the company use the separating families and co-parenting HR template or some form of that, where they've really thought about it. So, when someone goes into work, and I know 2 people this happened to, and one's a man, one's a woman. They went to work, their spouse had said the night before, it's over. They didn't see it coming. They were completely traumatized. And they were told their workplaces, who were very like, oh dear, that's a shame. And then they just had to get back to work. And in both cases, I said, how good, how good were you in the workplace? They said, oh, we were terrible. They were all over the place. If the bereavement policy at that company had included a major trauma, like my entire world's collapsed because we're going to have a divorce, then they could have go home, take a breather, but there would be something in place. But because he didn't have anything, so I think it's so important that companies do think about these things. It's not complicated or difficult for them to do that. But most of all, for me, it's about it causes so much misery when you do it wrong. So let people do divorce right, and
that's why we kids divorce right is our name.
And it's not just for them; it's for their children. Because let's face it, at the end of the day, I think we do a lot of this for the children, because they're the ones who ultimately suffer and carry on that conflict and trauma into their lives. So that's what we need.
Absolutely. And what Chloe says, shuttle mediation and preparation with a coach are great options. I believe that absolutely, for sure. And thank you for that, that comment, Chloe. I am convinced that we have created a system, at least here in the United States, where when somebody loses their life savings or their home or whatever it is, that it's like, oh, well, he or she got a divorce, so they lost everything. I want to scream. Mm-hmm. I want to scream and say, how did we get to the place where it's okay to bankrupt someone, to end a relationship that's no longer working? I will die on that hill to say, no, you should not lose your life savings. You don't need to lose your life savings. There is a better, less expensive, more amicable way. And, oh, by the way, at the end of it, you're going to be able to speak to each other. Maybe not right away, because maybe right away is maybe a little bit too soon, but definitely much sooner than through a contentious, litigated process. So glad. Susie, thank you for joining us from all the way on the other side of the pond. We appreciate you so much. And if you're in the UK, make sure that you look Susie up if you're going through a marriage breakup. Susie, hopefully you will be one of ours here at the Divorce Right, when we have somebody that has, that's the one thing that we do, Susie, is we have cultural experts from different, around the world. Like I say, imagine coming to the United States from another country, having to go through a divorce in our country. And it's totally different where you're from. So that's why having experts like you is so important to the success of Divorce Right, because we do want employees to divorce right. We don't advocate for divorce. We just want it done right. So if there's anything that we can do for you, for your company, if it seems like this is something that your employees could use and need, 3 to 5% of them are going through it. They're in the middle of it, starting it, thinking about it right now as you're listening to this. So we would love to support them in helping them make better decisions and better choices. Susie, thank you so much for joining us. And thank you, everybody. We will be back next week with another topic on how you can support your employees as they move through a pretty challenging time, but we're here to help. And reach out to us if we can support your team. Bye for now. Thank you, Susie.
Thank you.